I recently discovered that my family has a group chat I'm not part of, and it was far from what I imagined. I'm a 29-year-old guy, the middle child with two sisters, Emily, 34, and Sophie, 25. Up until a few weeks ago, I would have said we were a pretty close family. We're not perfect, but I always thought we had each other's backs. Lately, though, something feels off. It started with small things, like being left out of jokes during family gatherings. Emily and Sophie would laugh about something, and when I asked, they'd dismiss it with, "Oh, it's nothing," or quickly change the subject. At first, I brushed it off. I've been busy with work and figured I'd just miss a group chat or two. But it started happening more frequently. I'd hear about plans at the last minute, or find out details in conversations that made it obvious I wasn't in the loop. It felt like there was this unspoken connection between everyone else, leaving me out. The first real red flag came at a family barbecue. We were all in the backyard, and Sophie was showing Emily something on her phone. They were laughing like kids, so I asked what was so funny. The moment I spoke, the laughter stopped. They exchanged a weird glance before Sophie slipped her phone into her pocket, saying, "Oh, it's nothing important." The moment felt awkward, but I tried to play it off. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were hiding something from me. Things took a turn last weekend. I was at my parents' house helping my mom with her laptop. Since I'm the unofficial tech guy of the family, it's not unusual for me to help out. While I was fixing her email, her phone buzzed on the table. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the screen lit up and I saw a notification. It was from the family chat. My stomach sank. The family chat? I thought I was in the only family group chat we had. The one where we share mundane updates, grocery lists, and the occasional meme. But this was something else. Something I wasn't a part of. I didn't confront my mom. I handed back her laptop, made an excuse, and left. On the drive home, my mind kept replaying the message preview. Just don't bring it up in front of him today. What were they hiding? Was it about me? Had I done something to upset them? Instead of confronting anyone right away, I decided to watch more closely. I started recalling odd moments, like when a family trip was suddenly rescheduled months ago. Back then, they blamed Emily's work, but now I wasn't so sure. I also thought about those inside jokes and conversations that stopped whenever I walked into the room. I checked our regular family chat on my phone. It was exactly as I remembered, dry, boring updates. No jokes, no plans, no real conversations. It felt like a decoy chat, meant to keep me from realizing there was another, more active one. I couldn't keep this to myself, so I called my best friend, Jason. We've been close since college, and he's usually great at calming me down when I'm overthinking. I told him everything. The odd glances, the secret chat, the message on my mom's phone. Jason joked that maybe they were planning a surprise for me, but even he didn't sound convinced. He suggested I just ask them about it, but I wasn't ready to confront them yet. If it wasn't innocent, I didn't want to come across as paranoid. Instead, I decided to test the waters. The next time I saw Sophie, I casually asked if there were any new group chats I wasn't part of. Her reaction said it all. She froze wide-eyed before quickly replying, "No, just the usual one." Her response was too quick, almost like she had practiced it. It only confirmed what I already feared. She wasn't being honest. That night, I lay awake, unable to stop my mind from spiraling. I kept running through all the possible reasons for this hidden chat. Did I say or do something to upset them? Were they discussing me behind my back? Want to hear the rest of the story? Click share and find out more. The next day, I decided to change my approach. If they were going to keep secrets, I'd quietly gather more information before confronting anyone. I needed to understand what was going on before jumping to conclusions. At Sunday dinner, I kept my ears open for anything that might give me a clue. Emily and Sophie were talking about a weekend event that I hadn't heard of. When I casually asked about it, they both got a little too quiet before Emily said, "Oh, Just a small thing. Nothing major. Yeah, Sophie added quickly. It was really last minute. It wasn't the words. They were simple enough, but their tone set off alarm bells. I decided to test the waters further. After dinner, I offered to clean up. While everyone else left the kitchen, I noticed Sophie's phone sitting unattended on the counter. I wasn't proud of it, but curiosity got the better of me. I didn't open it, just glanced at the screen when it lit up with a notification. It was from the family chat. My chest tightened as I stared at it. Another message from Emily. Let's keep it light around him tonight. I didn't have time to process it before Sophie came back into the kitchen, giving me a startled look. Thanks for helping with the dishes, she said, grabbing her phone and tucking it into her pocket. That night, I felt like I was unraveling. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. Something was definitely going on, and they were deliberately keeping it from me. But why? The next day, I decided to talk to someone who might give me an honest answer without the awkwardness of confronting Emily or Sophie directly. My mom. She wasn't one for drama and usually stayed neutral when it came to family matters. When I dropped by unannounced, she seemed surprised but happy to see me. Over tea, I brought up the family dynamics in a roundabout way. Have you noticed anything different with Emily and Sophie lately? I asked casually. She hesitated for a moment before replying. Different hows? Like, maybe they're keeping something from me? I pressed gently. Her face gave nothing away, but her tone was a little too careful when she said, I don't think so. You know how they are, always chatting about little things. I wouldn't take it personally. Her answer was vague, almost dismissive, and it didn't sit right with me. Was she in on it too? I decided to push further. Mom, is there another group chat I'm not in? She froze, her hand halfway to her teacup, before forcing a smile. What makes you ask that? The room felt tense, and I knew I wasn't going to get a straight answer from her either. I left her house more confused than ever. Now I'm stuck wondering, how deep does this go? Is it just Emily and Sophie, or is the whole family in on it? And most importantly, why are they excluding me? I don't have the answers yet, but I'm determined to find out. Stay tuned, this isn't over. The following weekend, I decided to stop playing defense and take a more proactive approach. If they were going to hide things, I was going to uncover them one way or another. That Saturday, Emily was hosting a small gathering at her house. It wasn't anything formal, just some family and a couple of her friends. I wasn't entirely sure if I was invited or if someone had mentioned it as an afterthought, but I showed up anyway. When I arrived, the energy in the room shifted. Everyone smiled and greeted me, but it felt off. It was subtle, like a momentary pause in the conversation before they forced the cheerfulness back. Emily and Sophie exchanged a quick glance, one I'd become all too familiar with. As the evening went on, I noticed the same patterns repeating. They'd huddle together, laughing at something on their phones, and whenever I got close, they'd abruptly stop or change the subject. At one point, I caught Sophie trying to slide her phone into her pocket as I approached. What's so funny? I asked casually, leaning against the kitchen counter. Oh, just a dumb meme, she said, avoiding eye contact. Let me see, I said, holding out my hand with a grin. Her face flushed. It's not even that funny, she stammered, quickly brushing past me. That's when I realized something important. This wasn't just about avoiding confrontation. They were actively trying to keep me in the dark. Later in the evening, while most people were mingling in the living room, I noticed Emily's phone charging on the kitchen counter. My heart raced as I stood there, torn between respecting her privacy and finally getting some answers. I decided to do something bold. Instead of snooping, I picked up her phone and walked into the living room, holding it out. Hey, Emily, your phone was buzzing a lot. Might be something important, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The reaction was immediate. Emily's eyes widened, and she nearly tripped over herself, rushing to grab it. Sophie shot her a sharp look, and the room fell awkwardly silent. I didn't press further, but their panicked responses told me everything I needed to know. Whatever they were hiding was big enough to make them visibly uncomfortable. As the night wound down and guests began to leave, Emily pulled me aside. "Hey, are you okay? You've been acting a little strange lately," she said with a nervous smile. "Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing," I replied. She laughed it off, but I could see the tension in her posture. "You're overthinking, you know that? Everything's fine." But I knew better. When I got home that night, I made a decision. The direct approach wasn't working. If I wanted answers, I'd have to dig deeper, observe, listen, and find the right moment to confront them when they couldn't dodge the truth. And if the rest of the family wasn't on this, I needed to figure out who was playing along and why. The truth is out there, and I'm not stopping until I find it. Stay tuned. The following week, I couldn't shake the feeling that the situation was bigger than I originally thought. The clues were piling up, and while I still didn't have concrete answers, I was starting to piece together a picture, one that I didn't like. On Tuesday, I decided to take a different route. My dad, he's not the most talkative person in the family, but he's straightforward and doesn't get involved in drama. If anyone was likely to spill something by accident, it would be him. I dropped by his place under the pretense of borrowing some tools for a minor repair at my apartment. Over a cup of coffee, I casually brought up the family dynamics. "Hey, Dad, have you noticed anything weird going on lately with Emily and Sophie?" I asked, trying to sound nonchalant. He looked at me over his mug, frowning slightly. "Weird how?" "I don't know," I said, leaning back. "Just feels like they've been acting secretive. Like there's something they don't want me to know." He shrugged. "You know how they are. Always gossiping or planning something. Don't read too much into it." His answer was vague, almost dismissive, but I noticed a flicker of something in his expression. Hesitation, maybe? I decided to push a little. "Yeah, but it's been happening more often. I just feel out of the loop, you know? Like there's some inside joke or... I don't know. Something I'm not part of." He avoided my gaze, stirring his coffee unnecessarily. "You're overthinking it. They're probably just caught up in their own stuff." The conversation hit a dead end, but his behavior told me I was onto something. He knew more than he was letting on, but for some reason, he wasn't going to tell me. That evening, I decided to review everything I knew so far. I sat down with a notebook and started jotting down every odd interaction, every suspicious glance, and every moment I felt excluded. The pieces were all there. The secretive group chat, the sudden changes in family plans, the awkward silences when I entered a room, Sophie and Emily's overreactions when I brought up the chat, my dad's evasiveness. One detail stood out. The message I saw on my mom's phone. "Just don't bring it up in front of him today." What were they planning to talk about that I wasn't supposed to hear? I realized I needed to get ahead of this. If I kept waiting for someone to slip up, I'd be left in the dark indefinitely. It was time to take action. The next day, I came up with a plan. I'd organize a family dinner at my place. If there was one thing our family couldn't resist, it was free food and an excuse to get together. But this time, I'd be the one in control. I sent a message in the regular family group chat. "Hey everyone, dinner at my place Friday night. It's been too long since we all caught up." The responses trickled in as expected. Sophie replied first with a thumbs up emoji. Emily followed a little later with, "Sounds great. What time?" My parents agreed as well. What they didn't know was that this wasn't just a casual dinner. It was a trap. I'd set the stage perfectly. Once everyone was together, I'd bring up the group chat and force the conversation into the open. They wouldn't have the chance to dodge, deflect, or make excuses. I spent the rest of the week preparing, not just a meal, but my strategy. I'd keep the atmosphere light and relax at first, then ease into the topic when they least expected it. Friday night arrived, and as my family started trickling in, I felt a mix of nerves and determination. It was time to get some answers. The night of the dinner started like any other family gathering. The smell of roasted chicken and garlic filled my apartment as everyone arrived, chatting and laughing. I played the perfect host, making sure glasses were filled and plates were piled high. I could feel the tension in my chest, but I kept it buried under a casual smile. For the first hour, I let the conversation flow naturally. Emily shared stories about work. Sophie talked about a concert she was planning to attend, and my mom complained about my dad's growing collection of mystery novels. It was all so normal, so painfully ordinary, that I began to doubt myself. But then it happened. Sophie's phone buzzed on the table. I noticed it immediately, but so did Emily. She leaned over and quickly glanced at the screen before locking eyes with Sophie. The unspoken exchange between them was so obvious, it felt like a neon sign flashing guilty. This was my moment. So, I said, leaning back in my chair and swirling my glass of wine, "Are you guys ever going to tell me about the other family chat?" The room went silent. Forks paused midair, and all eyes turned to me. Emily and Sophie froze like deer caught in headlights. My mom looked down at her plate, and even my dad, usually unbothered, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I'm not mad," I continued, keeping my tone light, almost playful. "I'm just curious. What's so important in that chat that I can't be a part of it?" Sophie opened her mouth to say something but closed it again, clearly at a loss for words. Emily, ever the composed one, finally broke the silence. It's not what you think," she said, but her voice wavered. "Then what is it?" I pressed, my smile fading. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've all been keeping secrets from me. And honestly, it sucks." My mom sighed, setting down her fork. "It wasn't meant to hurt you," she said softly. My heart raced. This was it. The truth was coming. It started a few months ago. Emily began avoiding my gaze. We wanted a place to talk about something without overwhelming you. "Overwhelming me?" I asked, confused. Sophie jumped in, her voice shaky. "We were planning an intervention, okay? For you." "An intervention?" I repeated, completely blindsided. Emily nodded, finally meeting my eyes. "We've noticed how stressed you've been lately. You're always working, always keeping things bottled up. We wanted to figure out how to help you without making you feel attacked." I stared at them, trying to process what they were saying. "So, all the secrecy, the weird glances, the conversation stopping when I walked in, that was all because you thought I needed help?" They nodded in unison. My mom reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. "We love you, and we just wanted to support you, but we handled it poorly, and I'm sorry for that." For a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or yell. The weeks of paranoia, the sleepless nights, the feeling of being excluded, all of it had been rooted in their concern for me. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. "You could have just talked to me, you know," I said, shaking my head. "We didn't know how," Emily admitted. "But you're right. We should have handled it differently." The room fell into a contemplative silence before my dad, who had been quiet the entire time, finally spoke. "Well, now that it's out in the open, can we please go back to eating? This chicken's getting cold." That broke the tension, and we all laughed, a genuine, shared moment that felt like a reset. By the end of the night, I realized something important. My family wasn't perfect, but their intentions, however flawed, came from a place of love. As they left, Emily hugged me tightly. "No more secrets," she said, smiling. "No more secrets," I agreed, watching them disappear down the hallway. For the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. The truth wasn't what I had expected, but it was enough. And just like that, the invisible thread I thought had been keeping us apart was finally pulling us back together.